Welcome everyone to my Remielle guide. The first generation Void Hunter, Remielle, is finally here, and in this guide I will go over and explain her kit and new Lumiflux mechanics, then go over her playstyle and rotations, drive disc sets, main and sub stats, W engines, team comps, and finally Mindscapes. And without further ado, Remielle is a Void Hunter S-rank Lumiflux Anomaly Agent from the Covenant of Dyot faction. Her core skill enhancement bonus increases base attack and anomaly proficiency. Remielle is a support for anomaly teams, particularly teams with all anomaly agents. She is usually going to be off-field through the phase flow state and attacks passively, but every once in a while she becomes on-field to deal damage. Previous Void Hunter agents were all main damage dealers, and Remielle deviates from that trend, and she also deviates from other Void Hunters by introducing a whole new attribute, not just a variant. Remielle's kit introduces the Lumiflux Attribute and has many different mechanics and keywords, and while that may appear overwhelming, it is quite simple once we get into it. The Lumiflux Attribute is sort of a blank canvas. While Remielle deals lumen damage, she can also deal damage based on the attribute of the next character in your squad. In such a case, she will deal damage that counts as lumen and the next attribute, allowing her to be flexible in regards to enemies' resistance and weaknesses. The Lumiflux Attribute does not have a typical anomaly buildup, and does not trigger an attribute anomaly that deals damage. Instead, certain attacks can apply lumen buildup points. Up to 4 points can be applied onto an enemy. Her basic attack chain can apply 1 point, while both her X special and chain attack apply 2 points. However, the main way to build up these points would be done passively when Remielle is in the phase flow state attacking from off-field. If you trigger an attribute anomaly effect with your other agents against an enemy with lumen buildup points, the refringe effect is triggered and 1 lumen buildup point is consumed. Through her core skill, the refringe effect will increase the anomaly's damage based on Remielle's anomaly proficiency. Each time this happens, Remielle gains a resource called Void Flare. Up to 3 points can be accumulated. These points can be used to deal a special type of damage through various skills, such as an enhanced basic attack and ultimate. Using the enhanced basic attack or entering the phase flow will clear these points. The other part of Remielle's resources is the floating radiance gauge. These points allow Remielle to enter the off-field stance phase flow, and will be consumed during that stance. Up to 120 floating radiance points can be stored, and entering the phase flux requires the full amount. Floating radiance can be restored using basic attacks, but the main way would be through the enhanced basic attacks. To enter the phase flux, you could either hold her X special, or if you don't have energy, you could press her special, then press and hold special to enter the phase flow. During the phase flow, Remielle cannot be switched into. She will attack from off-field, apply lumen buildup points, and also grant a damage bonus to squad members for 60 seconds. Remielle can only be switched into by using a chain attack, or after gaining 3 Void Flare points, normal switch-in will be unlocked. Using normal switch-in after gaining 3 Void Flare points will trigger an assist, her entry skill. Her entry skill will upgrade the next use of Remielle's enhanced basic attack to a version that deals more damage. The chain attack entry also triggers the same effect. Remielle's entry skill will deal a special type of damage called Luminize. This damage relies on the Void Flare points and works in a special way. Going back to the Void Flare points, they are granted when a squad member triggers an attribute anomaly. The anomaly effect is stored in each Void Flare point. That damage is then multiplied by the skill's multiplier, and Remielle's anomaly proficiency through her core skill. Luminize damage is also not affected by regular damage bonuses, and it counts as anomaly damage. With 3 Void Flare points, there will be 3 instances of Luminized damage. You might also notice that each instance has slightly different damage. This goes back to the way Luminized damage works, as each instance's damage is based on the attribute anomaly of each Void Flare point. Remielle's Decibel's ultimate will also trigger the Luminize effect with a higher skill multiplier. The enhanced basic attacks will also trigger the Luminize effect. Remielle has two enhanced basic attacks. The first one can be used by holding basic attack as long as Void Flare points are available. The second version can be used after using Remielle's entry skill or chain attack, in which it deals more damage. There is a major differentiation between Remielle's entry skill and ultimate compared to her enhanced basic attacks. While both will deal Luminize damage, her enhanced basic attacks will consume all Void Flare points. This just means that you want to use Remielle's ultimate before her enhanced basic attack to deal the most damage. And finally, Remielle's faction bonus, which requires either an Anomaly Agent or agent from the same squad. Remielle will increase all squad members' attack by up to 1,600 attack, scaling on her initial attack. The scaling will increase based on how many Anomaly Agents are in your squad, going up to 40% of initial attack. This would require 4,000 attack to achieve the maximum effect. Similarly, Remielle's days during the phase flow will also increase based on the number of Anomaly Agents, going up to 35% more days. Additionally, if the enemy has Lumen build-up points, squad members' Anomaly build-up will be increased by 15%. If no Lumen build-up points are applied, the effect will last for 8 seconds. To summarize, with enough floating radiance, Remielle can enter the phase flow by using her X special or regular special. During the phase flow, floating radiance is consumed, and Remielle deals damage and daze, and applies Lumen build-up points, triggering attribute. Anomalies against enemies with Lumen build-up points will increase the anomaly's damage and grant Void Flare points. With 3 points, Remielle can be switched into, triggering an entry skill, after which her upgraded enhanced basic attack can be used to deal damage and restore floating radiance to allow Remielle to enter the phase flow again. Moving on, Remielle's skill level priority is to level up her core skill alongside her basic attack, special, assist, and ultimate. These skills are important to level. Basic attack, assist, and ultimate skill levels all directly increase Remielle's Luminize damage. Her special level will increase the damage bonus granted to squad members, while also increasing the days dealt from off-field. Remielle's dodge can be completely ignored as she's not going to be played on field. Moving on to Remielle's playstyle. Remielle is a support and sub-DPS for Anomaly team comps. Remielle provides buffs such as a damage bonus, Anomaly build-up rate increase, and an attack buff, which scales on the number of Anomaly Agents, as well as dealing a decent amount of days, allowing her to also act as a pseudo-stunner. This means that Remielle can particularly shine in teams with all Anomaly Agents, where you would usually pair her with an off-field Anomaly and an on-field Anomaly, or even 2 off-field Anomaly Agents. Velina is going to be one of the best agents to pair with Remielle for the off-field slot. Velina on her own is a great addition to Anomaly Agents, as she just deals a lot of damage through the Wind Attribute Anomaly, while also granting her own effects such as decreasing enemies' Attribute Anomaly build-up resistance, and building up her own days. In such teams, you could somewhat easily reach 2 to 3 stuns in game modes, such as Deadly Assault, possibly even more stuns. With the Wind Attribute, you also trigger vortexes instead of disorders. This works in Remielle's favor, as the latter will be affected by the Refringe multiplier, while disorder damage is not affected. This is because a disorder does not count as an anomaly state. This also implies that Remielle is not as good with agents who work around disorders, compared to other anomaly agents. With this in mind, anomaly agents who can also work with Velina, such as Aria, Promeia, Jane, and Alice, can see a decent increase in damage with Remielle compared to Yuzuha. Other anomaly agents like Burnice and Vivian can also fulfill the off-field slot with an on-field agent, and can also be used to a decent extent alongside Velina in the same squad. Remielle's Lumiflux Attribute can also allow her to work against practically any enemy, as enemies' resistance can be countered by changing out your squad members to match with the enemy. If an enemy is weak to wind, Velina can be placed next to Remielle and she deals wind damage. If an enemy is resistant to wind but weak to another element, maybe ether or ice, you could use Vivian or Promeia next to Remielle. While this all sounds great, there are a few situations where Remielle is not an upgrade to your Anomaly squad. This can be more notably seen with characters who use or benefit from disorders, such as Miyabi or Yanagi. In such teams, Remielle will often be a side grade, which is still decent nonetheless. With Miyabi, for example, playing her with Remielle and Velina is not that great, as Miyabi will be missing out on disorders, and therefore stacks towards her enhanced basic attack. Swapping out Velina with Burnice or Vivian works a lot better, but there are still some slight issues, such as gaining the 3 Void Flare points, which can be a bit slow in the beginning, as Miyabi is not usually built for Anomaly Mastery. One of Miyabi's best teams would be the one with Nangongyu and Yuzuha. This team is already very strong, and Remielle with Burnice or Vivian would be at most a side grade to this team. Moving on to rotations. But first, regardless of your exact team comp, Remielle's out of stun rotation remains pretty consistent. You would usually start with her X special to enter the phase flow, and then trigger anomalies with your Anomaly Agents. Once you get 3 Void Flare, you would switch into Remielle, then use her enhanced basic attack, and then enter the phase flow state again. In Deadly Assault, you would usually be able to enter the phase flow twice as the enemy is being stunned. The second usage of Remielle's entry skill and attacks would usually be reserved for the stun window, where her ultimate will also be up. With your on-field agents, you would want to save up their resources towards the stun window. During the stun window, the basic idea would be to split the on-field time between your on-field agent and Remielle. This involves Remielle exiting the phase flow while the enemy is stunned, then using her ultimate and basic attacks, trying to get her luminized damage during the stun window to benefit from the stun damage multiplier increase. I do also want to note that Remielle's enhanced basic attack should be used after her ultimate, as the enhanced basic attack consumes all current Void Flare points. Before showcasing some rotations, keep in mind that not every rotation showcased can apply in all different situations. These are only examples. With Promeia, as the stun window starts, I would use up all of Promeia's resources and trigger her Ablooms, then use her ultimate triggering the chain attack prompt, and choose Remielle. Do note that if you have the 3 Void Flare points, Remielle's entry skill would be used to exit the phase flow, regardless of whether you manually or through the chain attack prompt switch into Remielle. The actual chain attack triggers if you don't have 3 Void Flares, which would ideally be avoided, as it does not deal luminized damage. After Remielle's entry skill, I would cancel the chain prompt, use her ultimate, cancel chain, and use her enhanced basic attack. Promeia can take up some on-field time to trigger her Ablooms, and in this case, her ultimate is also used in the stun window, as it can also trigger Abloom. This can make the rotation tight, so you might sometimes need to cut Promeia's on-field time short. With Aria, you do not need to use her ultimate in the stun window, as it does not deal damage the same way Promeia does. With Aria, I used her ultimate just before the stun window to gain her stacks, then proceeded to consume all stacks through her enhanced basic attack to trigger Ablooms, then use normal switch-in to trigger Remielle's entry skill. After that, I used Aria's chain attack and consumed her stacks, followed by Remielle's ultimate, and use her enhanced basic attack just before the stun window ends. With Alice, I started the stun window with her enhanced basic attack, followed by her X special, just to make sure enough resources are available, then used her ultimate, triggering the chain prompt to Remielle's entry skill, then used Alice's chain attack, cancelled chain, used Alice's enhanced basic attack, and finally Remielle's ultimate and enhanced basic attack. A very similar rotation can be done with Miyabi, but this time opting to cancel the second chain instead. Started with Miyabi's enhanced basic attack, following up with X special for stacks and ultimate, chaining to Remielle's entry skill, used Miyabi's enhanced basic attack, followed by Remielle's ultimate, and used the enhanced basic attack. With Jane Doe, similar rotations can be done. However, her skills are not the ones dealing the main damage. The focus here is more so about triggering the physical anomaly while the enemy is stunned. So you could also time her ultimate to build up the physical anomaly before the stun window, and trigger it as the enemy is stunned. The rotation becomes much simpler without an on-field Anomaly Agent to split the stun window with. With Remielle, Velina, Burnice, or Vivian, you could trigger the stun window and use both Velina and Burnice's chain attacks, then chain to Remielle for her entry skill, then ultimate and basic attack. With all of that out of the way, let's move on to Remielle's build, starting with her drive disc sets. Remielle's best in slot, and only real option is the upcoming Feathered Fate drive disc set. The 2-piece effect will increase anomaly proficiency by 30, and the 4-piece effect further increases anomaly proficiency by 50, and if the equipping character is Lumiflux, Attribute anomaly damage dealt increases by 15%. The 4-piece effects remain if the equipping agent is off-field, and last for 15 seconds when they're on-field. This is Remielle's best and again only real option. The additional 80 anomaly proficiency and 15% anomaly damage work well to increase Remielle's refringe multiplier and luminize damage, and lasts long enough when she's on field during the stun window. As for your 2-piece set options, it'll be either an attack set or anomaly proficiency set. Both options are pretty close, and you should probably pick whichever set has the best substats. For a more concrete answer, the best set to use can possibly depend on your W engine. With W engines that provide attack, an anomaly proficiency 2-piece set can be fractionally better and vice versa. As for stats, the same can be applied. Remielle will want either an attack or anomaly proficiency 4th partition piece and an attack 5th and 6th partition piece to get as close as possible to the maximum attack buff, which requires 4000 attack. For the 5th slot, you could also use either a pen ratio or an attribute damage bonus disc based on your next agent, although these are not really recommended. Going for an attack 5th partition not only grants the team more damage, but is also more consistent regardless of team comp. As for substats, both anomaly proficiency and attack are the main and highest priority, followed by pen. You would generally want a good balance between attack and AP, and I should also mention that reaching 4000 attack for the maximum buff is not a requirement, as it is quite a high target and might be difficult to reach. Generally, you just need to get as close as possible without sacrificing anomaly proficiency. As for W engines, Remielle's signature W engine Ode of Resurrected Wings is her best in slot. This W engine has a base attack of 743 and provides 36% attack. For its effect, anomaly proficiency is increased by 96. When the refringe reaction is triggered, anomaly damage is increased by 20%, and squad members will deal 30% more damage, both effects lasting 30 seconds. Overall, this W engine provides a whole bunch of attack and AP, while also buffing your squad members and providing an anomaly damage bonus, which can increase Remielle's luminized damage. While this is her best in slot, it is actually not necessary, as one of Remielle's best options is an A-rank W engine, and that is Weeping Gemini, which provides 25% attack and at full refinement level up to 192 anomaly proficiency, which can also stack very easily when any squad member triggers an attribute anomaly. While Weeping Gemini provides an attack substat, at full refinement it can actually be better to use an attack 4th partition, which can marginally improve performance over what's shown here by around 1%. This W engine is a great option to use, and can also be obtained from the W engine shop, making getting her signature not really necessary. As for other options, Time Weaver is pretty decent, as it provides attack and anomaly proficiency. The anomaly proficiency bonus can be triggered consistently through Remielle's phase flow state, as it counts as a special attack. Aside from those options, Any other Anomaly Proficiency or Attack W engine can work just for its main stat. This also includes Flame Maker Shaker, which could possibly be better. However, it provides a regular damage bonus, which does not increase Remielle's Luminize damage. Other A rank and S rank W engines are also difficult to recommend, when Weeping Gemini is already one of her best W engines while being a free-to-get A rank. Moving on to team comps. Remielle is usually going to be played in squads with two other Anomaly agents, an on-field Anomaly agent, alongside an off-field agent, or just two off-field agents. For the off-field slot, you can use Velina. Velina deals a lot of damage on her own as an Anomaly Sub-DPS, and also builds up decent days, allowing for some fast stuns. Remielle synergizes pretty well with the Wind Attribute Anomaly and Vortexes, making the Remielle and Velina core even stronger. Alongside Velina, you could use some of the on-field Anomaly damage dealers who can synergize well with the Wind Attribute, which is pretty much all Anomaly agents, bar a few exceptions. Most on-field Anomaly agents are very close in damage here, and the option to use any specific agent depends more so on enemy weakness or resistance. Both Promeia and Aria can work pretty well here, and this will likely be one of their best respective teams. Alice, Jane Doe, and Piper can also work in this team, and again to a very decent extent. Alice can possibly deal a bit more damage compared to Jane Doe, but both perform very well. Jane's large assault damage can work in Remielle's favor as Luminize damage scales with the attribute anomaly effect of each Void Flare point. You could also use Jane with Alice, and it works pretty well. Grace can also work here, and again probably her best performing team. And you might see the pattern here, as most on-field Anomaly agents can work pretty well with Remielle and Velina, and will probably see the most damage there. Alongside Velina, you could also use an off-field agent like Burnice or Vivian, having Velina take on a more on-field role. Burnice's off-field fire can apply when enemies are attacked, which can make it easy to trigger by both Remielle and Velina, and somewhat passive. Burnice's resources here can be consumed pretty quickly, although it shouldn't be a problem with constant switching in. With Vivian, a high-energy Velina can pretty consistently trigger her ablooms. Remielle, Velina, and Burnice, or Vivian, can see some pretty decent performance, very close to playing with a dedicated on-fielder, while also being potentially easier to play, especially during the stun window due to the simpler rotations. You could also replace Velina with Burnice or Vivian as your off-field anomaly, along with an on-field agent. And while the performance might not be as good as Velina, this will still be very strong. Burnice or Vivian as the off-field agent can be better than Velina when playing with an anomaly agent who utilizes disorders such as Miyabi. You could also use Yanagi here alongside Miyabi. As mentioned before, this team will still be somewhat decent, but again at most a side grade to a Nangongyu and Yuzuha team. What about Nangongyu instead of a third anomaly alongside Miyabi? In this case, Remielle does lose out on a portion of the attack buff, days increase, and the refringe multiplier. In return, Nangongyu provides even faster stuns and her damage buffs. For Miyabi, having Nangongyu is actually pretty similar in performance to Velina with Miyabi. However, for this use case, Yuzuha is a lot better instead. You could also use Nangongyu with Velina, but again you do lose out on many buffs. But if the content does suit the Wind Attribute, this could definitely clear, but you would probably be better off with any other anomaly agent. The same would also go for Yuzuha, not recommended, but should be able to score high against enemies with Wind Chill. And finally, Mindscapes. Remielle's M1 and M2 are her strongest Mindscapes, with her M6 allowing for an on-field playstyle. If you're wondering between getting her signature W engine or Mindscape 1, well, they are about the same damage increase. If you're only looking for a single upgrade, her W engine is more cost-effective, being slightly easier to get, while her Mindscape 1 opens up the path towards M2 and an overall large damage gain if you're looking to spend more pulls. Getting on to Remielle's Mindscapes, starting with her M1. Entering combat, Remielle will gain 3 Void Flares, and her Luminize damage will ignore 50% of the enemy's all-attribute resistance. Additionally, when using Remielle's entry skill, she gains 200 decibels. And finally, while in the phase flow state, all squad members deal 10% more attribute anomaly damage. This is a large increase to Remielle's damage while also buffing squad members' damage. The additional decibels can be potentially very helpful, ensuring that her ultimate is always ready in time for the stun window. M2 increases Remielle's refringe coefficient by 20%. And under the prismatic effect, squad members' anomaly damage ignores 15% of the target's defense. Remielle will also attack faster in the phase flow, possibly stunning enemies even faster. Overall, another strong Mindscape and a decent stopping point, focusing more so on your squad members' anomaly damage. M3 and M5 increase skill levels by 2, which also increases her phase flow damage bonus to squad members and Luminize damage. M4 will increase Remielle's Luminize damage and also restore the 3 Void Flares given by her M1. This Mindscape on its own is just an increase to her Luminize damage, although the additional Void Flares and effect here are more so meant to be used if you're playing her on field at M6. M6 will trigger Luminize twice each time Remielle uses her enhanced basic attack to deal Luminize damage. This will essentially double her enhanced basic attack damage, and on its own, it's still an increase to your team damage. Additionally, when Remielle's 4th basic attack hits an enemy, Remielle gains 3 special Void Flares, dealing 25% of the damage dealt by the Void Flares granted by her M1, essentially allowing her to be played on field, where you could use her basic attack to gain Void Flares and deal damage through her enhanced basic attacks. Overall, Remielle's Mindscapes are not necessary to get, although she does have some strong early Mindscapes, while later Mindscapes shift the focus towards playing her on field, while still providing damage gains, even if you're playing her off field. And that's all from this guide. This guide did come out a lot later than intended, but thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.